The sun rose brightly over the bustling city of New Haven. People hurried along the sidewalks, sipping coffee and chatting about their day. Children played in the parks, and the sound of laughter filled the air. Everything seemed normal. But far above, in the depths of space, something ominous was approaching Earth. A massive fleet of alien ships, known as the Psyloph, glided through the void. Their dark, sleek forms reflected the light of distant stars as they navigated toward the planet. The Psyloph were known throughout the galaxy for their power and ruthlessness. They had conquered countless worlds, enslaving their inhabitants and exploiting their resources. Now, Earth was next on their list. As the ships entered Earth's atmosphere, alarms began to blare in the command centers of the Psyloph fleet. Zorak, the imposing leader of the Psyloph, stood in the control room, his long, shimmering body tense with anticipation. His yellow eyes scanned the screens displaying images of Earth below. "Prepare for invasion," he commanded, his voice echoing in the chamber. "This planet will belong to the Psyloph." Back in New Haven, people began to notice the dark shapes in the sky. At first, they thought it was a storm or an unusual weather pattern. But as the ships descended, the truth became clear. Panic spread through the streets like wildfire. Maya, a bright young woman with a passion for technology, stood in her apartment, staring out the window. She had always been curious about the stars, dreaming of adventures in space. But now, those dreams were turning into nightmares. The sky darkened as the alien ships blotted out the sun, and her heart raced with fear. "Mom! Dad!" Maya shouted, rushing to find her parents. They were watching the news, their faces pale. The news anchor reported live from the city square, where crowds were gathering, pointing at the ships overhead. "We're under attack. The Psyloph have come for us." Maya's parents exchanged worried glances. "We need to get to the shelter," her father urged, grabbing his wife's hand. But Maya felt a pull to stay and watch. What did the Psyloph want? Why were they here? As the ships landed, Zorak stepped out, towering over the crowd. His presence commanded attention. He raised his arm, and a holographic projection appeared above him, displaying the Psyloph emblem, a fierce, clawed hand clutching a globe. "People of Earth," Zorak's voice boomed through the streets. "You are now subjects of the Psyloph Empire. You will serve us or face annihilation." Fear gripped the crowd as they looked at one another, confusion and panic evident in their eyes. A few brave souls shouted back, "We will not be enslaved." But Zorak merely smiled, revealing rows of sharp teeth. "You underestimate us," he replied. "Resistance will only lead to your destruction." In that moment, Maya felt a surge of anger. How dare they threaten her home? She remembered stories from her childhood about the resilience of humanity, tales of people coming together in times of crisis. She glanced at her parents, who were frozen in fear, and knew she had to act. But how? As Zorak continued his speech, urging submission, Maya spotted Jake, her childhood friend, pushing through the crowd. He was always the one with ideas, the one who inspired her to think outside the box. Their eyes met, and a spark of determination passed between them. "Jake," she called, rushing to his side. "We can't let them take our planet. We need to fight back." Jake nodded, his jaw set with determination. "But how?" "They have advanced technology, and we're just us. We have to gather people who feel the same way. If we can unite the others, we might stand a chance," Maya said, her voice filled with conviction. But before they could form a plan, Zorak raised his hand again. "You have 1 hour to comply," he announced. "After that, we will begin our search for those who resist. Choose wisely, humans. Your fate lies in your hands." With that, Zorak turned and marched back toward his ship, flanked by his guards. The crowd stood frozen, fear and uncertainty hanging in the air. Maya's heart raced as she looked around at the people who had once been her neighbors, her friends. Would they really surrender to the aliens? As the minutes ticked by, panic turned into chaos. People began to run in different directions, some seeking shelter, others shouting for help. Maya felt a mix of fear and determination surge through her. "We have to act now," she urged Jake, grabbing his arm. "Let's gather everyone we can. We need to show the Tyloth that we won't back down." Jake nodded, and together they pushed through the crowd, calling out to others. "We need to unite. We can't let them take our home." They moved from group to group, rallying people to their cause. Slowly, others began to join them, drawn by their courage. But as they gathered a small crowd, Zorak's voice echoed through the streets again. "Time is running out. Humans, you will regret your defiance." Maya felt the weight of the moment. They were standing on the brink of something monumental. The Tyloth may have technology and strength, but humans had something else: heart and resilience. And as long as they stood together, they had a fighting chance. With that thought in mind, Maya took a deep breath and stepped forward. "We will not surrender," she shouted, her voice strong and clear. "We will fight for our freedom." The crowd erupted into cheers, and in that moment, Maya knew they had ignited a spark of hope. They might be facing a formidable enemy, but they were ready to show the galaxy what humanity was truly capable of. As the ships loomed above, casting dark shadows over the city, Maya felt a fire ignite in her heart. The invasion had begun, but so had the fight for humanity's future, and she was ready to lead the charge. The stage was set for a battle that would echo through the stars. Rallying the resistance. The echoes of Maya's declaration reverberated through the streets, sparking a newfound determination among the gathered crowd. "We will fight for our freedom," she had shouted, and the people responded with a chorus of agreement. They were no longer just bystanders. They were becoming a resistance. As they huddled together, Maya felt a sense of responsibility settle on her shoulders. She turned to Jake, who stood beside her, eyes wide with excitement. "We need a plan," she said urgently. "We can't just rely on hope alone." Jake nodded, his mind racing. "First, we need to find out what the Tyloth are doing. They're probably preparing to take control of the city. We need to gather information." He glanced at the crowd, a mix of terrified civilians and a few brave volunteers. "We also need to organize ourselves. If we want to fight, we need to be ready." Maya agreed. "Let's split into teams. One group can scout the alien ships and gather intel, while another can spread the word and recruit more people. We need to make it clear that we're not going down without a fight." They quickly organized the crowd, assigning roles to the volunteers. Some would venture close to the Tyloth ships, risking their safety to observe the aliens' movements. Others would work on gathering supplies, weapons, and anything that could help them in the impending conflict. As the teams prepared to disperse, Maya took a moment to look around. She saw familiar faces among the crowd: neighbors, classmates, and friends. They were all united by a common purpose. This was her home, and she was willing to do whatever it took to protect it. "Remember, we're not just fighting for ourselves," Maya reminded the group, her voice steady and loud. "We're fighting for our families, our friends, and everyone who believes in the freedom of our planet. Stick together, watch each other's backs, and we will prevail." With that, the crowd began to disperse, each team setting off on their respective missions. Maya and Jake took the lead for the scouting team. They moved carefully, avoiding the gaze of the Tyloth guards patrolling the area around the landing zone. As they approached the alien ships, the massive vessels loomed overhead, casting dark shadows on the ground. Maya's heart raced, but she felt empowered knowing she wasn't alone. Jake was by her side, and a few other brave souls had joined them. Nia, an agile gymnast with quick reflexes, and Carlos, a tech whiz with an affinity for gadgets. They crouched behind a nearby building, peering out at the Tyloth. "Look at that," Nia whispered, pointing toward a group of aliens gathered around a large console near one of the ships. "They're working on something." Jake adjusted his glasses and squinted at the scene. "They might be setting up a command center. If we can get closer, we might learn more about their plans." "Okay, but we have to be careful," Maya warned. "We don't know how many guards are around." We need to stay hidden. The group nodded in agreement and crept forward, moving silently through the shadows. Maya's heart thumped in her chest as they got closer to the Tyloth. The aliens were indeed focused on their work, illuminated by the glow of strange screens displaying data and schematics. Maya's instincts kicked in. "We need to find a way to listen in," she said, scanning the area for any tools or devices that might help. That's when Carlos spotted a discarded drone near their hiding spot. "I can reprogram this," he said excitedly. "It can fly up and record whatever they're saying." "Do it," Maya replied, her heart racing with anticipation. Carlos quickly got to work, fingers flying over the drone's interface. The others kept watch for any approaching guards. After a few tense moments, Carlos finished. "It's ready. I'll send it up now." The drone hummed to life, rising silently into the air. Everyone held their breath, watching as it floated closer to the group of Tyloth. Maya's eyes widened as the drone hovered just above their heads, discreetly capturing the conversation below. "Prepare the units for deployment." Zorek's voice came through clearly, amplified by the drone's sensors. "We will begin our search for resistance immediately. Any human found will be captured or eliminated. We cannot allow them to disrupt our plans." Maya felt a chill run down her spine. "They're planning to hunt us down," she whispered to the others. "We need to warn everyone." Just then, a loud clang echoed from the direction of the Tyloth. "What was that?" one of the guards shouted, his voice sharp and commanding. The aliens began to look around, suspicion growing in the air. "Carlos, bring the drone back," Maya hissed, urgency flooding her voice. Carlos quickly programmed the drone to return, and it zipped back to them, just as the guards began to approach their hiding spot. "Run," Jake shouted, grabbing Maya's arm. They took off, sprinting back toward the safety of the buildings. The sound of alien voices shouting in anger chased them as they dashed away, adrenaline propelling them forward. When they finally reached a safe distance, they slowed down, gasping for breath. "That was too close," Nia panted, her eyes wide with fear. "What do we do now?" Maya's mind raced as she considered their next move. "We need to get this information back to the others. They need to know what we just heard. The Tyloth are planning to capture us, and we can't let that happen." As they made their way back to the meeting point, Maya felt a surge of hope. They had gathered valuable intel, and now it was time to prepare for the fight ahead. She knew the road would be difficult, but together, they were stronger. When they reached the rally point, Maya stood before the growing crowd, her heart pounding with urgency. "We've just encountered the Tyloth," she announced, drawing the attention of everyone present. "They plan to hunt us down. We need to act fast and prepare for what's coming." A murmur spread through the crowd, fear evident on many faces, but Maya also saw determination. "We're not alone in this fight," she continued. "We have each other. Together, we can stand against them. We will not let our planet fall." With her words igniting a flame of courage, Maya felt the energy shift in the crowd. They were ready to fight. And as the sun set on the horizon, casting a golden light over the city, Maya knew the battle for humanity's survival had only just begun. The tension in the air was palpable as Maya stood before the crowd, her heart racing with anticipation. News of the Tyloth's plans spread like wildfire among the humans, igniting a fierce resolve within them. People whispered among themselves, sharing stories of their families, friends, and everything they held dear. It was a moment that united them all. Fear had transformed into determination. "Tonight, we fight for our freedom," Maya called out, her voice steady and strong. The crowd erupted into cheers, their fear giving way to courage. She scanned the faces of her friends and neighbors, seeing the flicker of hope in their eyes. "But we need to be smart about this. We can't just charge in blindly. We have to strategize." Jake stepped forward, nodding in agreement. "We need to know where the Tyloth are stationed and how many of them there are. If we can figure out their weaknesses, we'll have a better chance at winning." Nia, always quick on her feet, chimed in, I have some friends who are skilled in stealth. They can help us gather information without getting caught. We need eyes on the ground, watching the Tyloth movements." Maya clapped her hands, the sound cutting through the chatter. "That's a great idea. Let's split into smaller teams again. We'll need scouts, tech experts, and fighters. Everyone has a role to play." As the crowd organized into teams, Maya felt a swell of pride. They were no longer just terrified citizens. They were a resistance. They were ready to fight for their planet. Hours later, as night fell, the teams moved through the darkened streets, each person taking on their designated tasks. Maya led a group of fighters, including Jake, Nia, and Carlos, toward the outskirts of the city. Their mission was to find a hidden spot where they could plan their next move. Maya remembered a small abandoned factory on the edge of town. "We can use it as our base of operations," she suggested, leading her team through the dimly lit streets. "It's away from the main roads, and it should be easy to defend." They arrived at the factory, its windows shattered and walls covered in graffiti. Inside, the air was thick with dust, but it felt safe, an excellent place to plan their resistance. The group gathered around an old table, its surface cluttered with debris. Jake spread out a map of the city, marking the locations of the Tyloth ships and patrol routes. "If we can coordinate attacks on their supply lines, we can weaken them significantly," he said, his eyes shining with determination. Carlos, who had been working on the drone footage they had captured earlier, chimed in. "I found out where they keep their weapon supplies. If we can hit that location, we might be able to turn their weapons against them." Maya leaned over the map, her mind racing. "That's perfect. We can create diversions to draw their attention away from our main target. Once they're distracted, we strike." Nia looked thoughtful. "What about the civilians? We need to make sure they're safe. If we're going to engage in combat, we can't put them in harm's way." "Right," Maya agreed. "We'll need to establish safe zones throughout the city where people can take refuge if things go wrong. It's crucial that we protect our own." With a plan starting to take shape, the group began brainstorming the best way to execute their strategy. Hours flew by as they discussed tactics, made adjustments, and prepared for the inevitable confrontation. But as the night deepened, an uneasy feeling settled in the back of Maya's mind. Suddenly, Carlos's voice broke through her thoughts. "Hey, I just got an alert on my communicator. The Tyloth are mobilizing. They're moving toward our location." Maya's heart raced as she turned to the others. "We need to get out of here. They can't find us, not now." The group quickly gathered their things, moving stealthily through the factory's exit. Maya led them into the shadowy streets, her senses heightened. They needed to regroup and warn the other teams before it was too late. As they slipped away from the factory, the air crackled with anticipation. They hurried toward the main square, the center of their makeshift resistance. But as they approached, a wave of dread washed over them. The square was swarming with Tyloth soldiers, their armor gleaming under the streetlights. "We need to hide," Maya whispered urgently, her pulse quickening. They ducked into an alley, peering out to assess the situation. The Tyloth appeared to be searching for something or someone. "They know we're here," Jake said, fear creeping into his voice. "We have to warn the others." Maya nodded, her mind racing. "If we can find a way to distract them, we can slip through and reach the command center. It's our best chance." Nia, her eyes gleaming with mischief, grinned. "I have an idea. If I can get close enough, I can create a diversion. I can throw something loud to draw their attention." "Do it," Maya urged, adrenaline pumping through her veins. Nia quickly scoured the alley, finding a few old cans and a rock. She took a deep breath, readying herself. "When I give the signal, create chaos. We need to move fast." As Nia positioned herself to throw the makeshift distraction, Maya and the others held their breath. 3, 2, 1. Nia launched the cans into the street, where they clattered and rolled, making a loud noise. The Tyloth soldiers turned, startled. What was that? One shouted, and they began to move toward the sound. Now, Maya shouted, and they took off, sprinting toward the command center. They weaved through the streets, their hearts racing as they heard that Psylocke shouting in confusion behind them. The plan had worked, but they couldn't let their guard down just yet. As they approached the command center, Maya felt a surge of determination. They were fighting not just for themselves, but for every human on the planet. This was their chance to turn the tide. Together, they burst into the command center, ready to take a stand against the invaders. Maya felt the weight of responsibility on her shoulders, but she also felt a powerful sense of unity among her friends. They were a force to be reckoned with, and they would not back down. With a fierce cry, Maya led the charge, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The gathering storm of resistance had begun, and there was no turning back. The command center was a chaotic whirlwind of screens flashing warnings, alarm bells ringing, and Psylocke soldiers scrambling to respond to the unexpected intrusion. Maya and her team burst through the heavy doors, adrenaline surging through their veins. They had entered the heart of the enemy's operations, and now they had to act quickly. "Jake, take the left side," Maya shouted, pointing to the row of computers that displayed various data on the Psylocke's movements. "We need to gather intel on their plans. Naya, Carlos, cover him." The three dashed to their designated spots, with Nia and Carlos providing a protective barrier, while Jake began typing furiously on the console. Maya stood watch, scanning the room for any signs of danger. Come on," Jake muttered under his breath, his fingers flying over the keyboard. The screen flickered and displayed troop movements, supply routes, and even the locations of key installations. "Got it. This is incredible." Maya glanced at the map, her heart racing. "This could give us the edge we need. We can target their supply lines and disrupt their operations." "Just a bit longer," Jake urged, his eyes locked on the screen. Suddenly, a red alert blared through the command center. The Psylocke soldiers had realized the breach and were regrouping. "We don't have much time," Nia shouted. "They'll be here any second." Maya's mind raced. "Jake, download everything you can. We need to get out of here with this information." Just then, the doors burst open, and a squad of Psylocke soldiers stormed in, weapons drawn. Maya's heart dropped. "Everyone, take cover." They ducked behind a row of consoles as laser fire ricocheted off the walls. The room filled with the acrid smell of burnt metal. Maya's heart pounded as she glanced at Jake. "Are you done yet?" "Almost," he called out, sweat beading on his forehead. "I'm just downloading the last bit now." Nia peered around the corner, assessing the situation. "We need to create a diversion. If we can distract them long enough, we can get Jake out of here with the data." "On it," Carlos nodded, quickly searching for anything they could use. He spotted a pile of equipment nearby and grabbed a couple of grenades. This should do the trick. Maya felt a rush of fear, but also pride. "You're sure about this?" Carlos grinned. "We have to buy Jake time. It's now or never." As Carlos prepared the grenades, Nia crouched low, her eyes focused. "When I give the signal, throw them, and we'll make a break for the exit." The tension in the room escalated. The Psylocke soldiers were closing in, and the hum of their energy weapons echoed ominously. Maya took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. "Ready," Nia whispered, her voice barely audible over the chaos. 3, 2, 1. Carlos threw the grenades across the room, and they exploded with a blinding flash of light and a thunderous boom. Smoke filled the air, creating a chaotic scene as Psylocke soldiers shouted in confusion. "Now, go!" Maya yelled, her voice cutting through the noise. They dashed toward the exit, heart pounding in unison. Jake, clutching the data drive tightly, ran beside them, adrenaline driving them forward. They dodged laser fire as they sprinted through the smoky chaos, the sounds of battle ringing in their ears. But as they neared the exit, they were met with an unexpected sight. A group of Psyloth soldiers blocking their path. Panic surged through Maya. "What do we do now?" "Over there," Nea shouted, pointing to a nearby maintenance hatch. "If we can get to that, we might escape." Maya nodded, determination fueling her. "Follow me." They changed direction, darting toward the hatch, the air thick with tension. Just as they reached it, a shot rang out, narrowly missing Carlos. "Go, go," Maya urged, pushing the hatch open. They scrambled through, squeezing into the tight space just as the Psyloth soldiers rounded the corner. Maya could hear their shouts echoing behind them, but they were safe for now. Inside the maintenance tunnel, they caught their breath. The dim lights flickered overhead, and the air felt heavy with dust. Are we safe?" Carlos gasped, his heart racing. "For now," Maya replied, her mind still racing. "We need to find another way out of here and regroup with the others." Jake looked down at the data drive in his hand. "We got what we needed. This is crucial information, but we have to get back to the surface before they find us." They moved cautiously through the narrow tunnel, listening intently for any signs of danger. The air felt thick with tension, and each step echoed ominously in the confined space. Finally, they reached a junction in the tunnel. Maya peered around the corner, trying to get a sense of their surroundings. "Which way should we go?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Nea pointed to the left. "That way leads back to the city. We can find a way to regroup with the other teams." As they ventured deeper into the tunnels, they suddenly heard voices above them. The Psyloth were surging, their guttural language echoing through the vents. Maya felt a chill run down her spine. "We need to hurry," she whispered. "They're getting closer." They pressed on, adrenaline pumping, until they finally reached a small exit. Maya pushed open the hatch and peered outside. The night sky was clear, and they could see the outlines of buildings in the distance. "Freedom!" Carlos exclaimed, relief washing over him. But their moment of triumph was short-lived. A Psyloth patrol was moving through the streets just beyond the exit, their armored figures scanning the area. "Stay down," Maya hissed, pulling the others back into the shadows. They waited in tense silence, watching as the Psyloth moved past, unaware of the humans hiding just a few feet away. Maya's heart raced as she realized how close they were to being captured. Once the patrol moved on, they slipped out of the hatch and into the shadows of the city. Maya led the group through a series of back alleys, her instincts guiding them. They needed to find a safe place to regroup and plan their next move. Finally, they reached a small park, surrounded by tall trees that offered some cover. Maya felt the tension ease as they gathered in the dim light. "Okay," she said, looking at her friends. "We did it. We got the data, and we're still alive. But now we need to think about what comes next." Jake nodded, still catching his breath. "We have the locations of their supply routes and key installations. We can use this information to coordinate our next attacks." Nea's eyes sparkled with determination. "We need to strike hard and fast before they can regroup. We can't let them gain the upper hand again." Maya smiled at her friends, feeling the surge of pride. "We have to do this together. We've proven that we can fight back, but we need a plan." They spent the next few hours strategizing under the cover of night, fueled by the adrenaline of their escape and the urgency of their situation. The fire of resistance burned brightly within them, and Maya felt a renewed sense of purpose. As dawn began to break on the horizon, they emerged from the shadows, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. They were not just humans, they were warriors, standing united against the Psyloth threat. And together, they would fight for their freedom. The early morning light broke through the dark clouds, casting a golden glow over the city. Maya and her team stood on a rooftop, overlooking the streets below. The city felt tense, a lingering anxiety filling the air as they prepared for their next move. "From this vantage point, we can see the Psyloth patrols," Maya said, her voice steady despite the pounding of her heart. We need to determine the best route to the old factory where we can gather more humans. It's our best chance to rally the resistance. Jake adjusted his tactical visor, scanning the area. There are patrols on every corner. We'll have to be careful. We can't afford to get caught again. Nia, looking fierce and determined, added, we should split into 2 groups. One to scout the area, the other to head to the factory and start organizing everyone. Carlos nodded in agreement. That's a solid plan. We can't wait around. We need to show the others that we're ready to fight back. Maya smiled at her friends, feeling the surge of courage. All right, let's do this. We meet back here in 1 hour, and then we head to the factory together. With a nod, they separated, each taking a different route through the city. Maya felt the weight of responsibility on her shoulders as she moved through the shadows, her heart racing with anticipation. As she navigated through alleyways and side streets, she spotted groups of humans hiding in their homes, fear etched on their faces. She could feel their despair, but she also sensed their yearning for hope. With a quick decision, she approached a nearby building where she had seen a few familiar faces. Maya, one of them exclaimed, a woman with dark hair and worried eyes. What's happening? We heard about the Psyloph invasion, but we didn't know if we should leave or stay. Maya stepped closer, lowering her voice. We're organizing a resistance. We need everyone who's willing to fight. The Psyloph may have power, but we have something they don't. Our determination and our unity. The woman's eyes widened, hope igniting within them. I want to help. My brother is hiding in the next block. I can gather others. Good. Rally as many as you can and bring them to the old factory, Maya instructed. We need to act quickly. Time is not on our side. As Maya continued her mission, she noticed more people peeking from their doors, their eyes filled with a mix of fear and curiosity. She approached each group, sharing the plan and urging them to join. Word spread quickly, and she could feel the energy shifting as more people began to rally behind the idea of resistance. Meanwhile, Jake and Carlos were scouting another sector of the city. They crouched behind a pile of debris, observing a patrol of Psyloph soldiers moving in a tight formation. We need to find a way to divert their attention, Carlos whispered, his eyes fixed on the patrol. If we can create a distraction, we might get more people to the factory. Jake nodded, formulating a plan. I have a few smoke grenades left. We can use those. It will give us cover to slip past them. Let's do it, Carlos replied, a grin spreading across his face. They carefully prepared their smoke grenades, ensuring they were ready to throw at a moment's notice. When the moment arrived, they timed their throw perfectly, sending the grenades rolling toward the patrol. Smoke erupted, enveloping the area in a thick cloud, and the soldiers were thrown into confusion. Now, Jake shouted, and they sprinted through the smoke, weaving between the startled Psyloph troops and making their way toward the factory. The scene was chaotic, but it was a calculated chaos. Maya had worked tirelessly to gather as many humans as she could, and soon they began to pour into the old factory, an abandoned building filled with rusting machinery and shadows. It was the perfect hideout and meeting point. Inside the factory, Maya and her team quickly organized everyone. Listen up, Maya called, her voice echoing off the steel walls. We've gathered you here because we're going to fight back against the Psyloph. They believe we're weak, but together we are strong. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd, and Maya felt a surge of pride. She turned to her friends, who stood beside her, ready to support her. We have crucial information about the Psyloph supply routes and troop movements, Jake added, stepping forward. This gives us an advantage. We can hit them where it hurts. We need to divide ourselves into smaller teams, Naya suggested. Some of us can gather more weapons and supplies, while others can focus on scouting and planning the next strike. Carlos stepped up, a fierce determination in his eyes. I can lead a group to gather supplies. We need food, water, and anything we can use as weapons. The Psyloph might think they're stronger, but they underestimate our will to survive. Maya nodded, feeling the energy of the crowd shift. Let's do this. We'll coordinate our strikes and ensure every move counts. We can't just wait for them to come for us. We have to take the fight to them. As they began to organize into teams, a sense of hope filled the factory. The humans who had once cowered in fear were now united, their spirits ignited by the prospect of standing against their oppressors. Maya felt a sense of purpose wash over her. They would fight, not just for their survival, but for their freedom. The fear that had once gripped them was now replaced by determination. As they moved into action, Maya thought about the people who had suffered under the Psylof's tyranny. Each one of them had a story, a life worth fighting for, and together they would reclaim their future. With newfound strength, they prepared for the battles to come, ready to prove that even in the darkest of times, the human spirit could rise, fierce and unyielding against any threat. They would not be enslaved. They would fight back and win. The atmosphere inside the old factory buzzed with energy as Maya and her team prepared for their first strike against the Tyloth. Plans were laid out on a makeshift table, with maps of the surrounding area spread across its surface. Maya felt the weight of responsibility on her shoulders, but she also felt a surge of determination from everyone around her. They were ready to fight. "Listen up," Maya called out, her voice steady and strong. "Tonight, we hit the Psyloth supply depot. They're vulnerable right now, and if we take out their supplies, we can weaken their hold on the city." The crowd of humans listened intently. Some were young, while others were older, but all shared a common goal: freedom. Maya could see the resolve in their eyes, and it made her heart swell with pride. Jake stepped forward, pointing at a spot on the map. "This is the supply depot. It's heavily guarded, but we know their patrol patterns. We'll use the element of surprise to our advantage." Nia, always the strategist, chimed in. "I suggest we split into 3 teams. One will create a distraction while the other 2 strike from opposite sides. We can overwhelm them before they even know what hit them." Carlos nodded in agreement. "I'll lead one team to the west side. Maya, you and Jake take the east. We'll meet at the supply crates and secure as many resources as we can." Maya felt a wave of pride wash over her. They had come so far from the scared and hopeless people they once were. Now, they were a team, ready to fight for their freedom. As night fell, the city became quieter, and the glow of the moon illuminated their path. They moved in silence, hearts racing with anticipation and fear. The cool air filled with a sense of urgency as they approached the depot. Maya took a deep breath, focusing on her mission. She could hear the distant sounds of the Tyloth guards talking and patrolling. "Stick to the shadows," she whispered to her team. "Stay low, and let's move quickly." The first team, led by Carlos, was already in position. They waited for the signal to create a distraction. Maya glanced at Jake, who was focused and ready. "Ready?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Always," he replied, his eyes gleaming with determination. Suddenly, a loud explosion erupted in the distance. The ground shook as fire and smoke filled the air. Carlos's team had made their move. The Psylocth guards shouted in alarm, confusion rippling through their ranks. "Now," Maya shouted, leading her team forward. They sprinted towards the east side of the depot, where the guards were distracted by the chaos. As they neared the supply crates, Maya felt adrenaline coursing through her veins. She and Jake moved swiftly, taking down guards with precision. Each strike was calculated, their movements fluid as they worked together seamlessly. "Keep moving," Maya urged, her heart pounding. "We need to get to the supplies." Just as they reached the crates, a loud alarm blared through the air, and red lights began flashing. "They've called for backup," Jake shouted, urgency rising in his voice. "Grab what you can," Maya commanded. "We need to move fast." The team worked quickly, throwing crates open to reveal supplies, food, water, and medical kits. But as they filled their bags, Maya noticed something out of the corner of her eye. A group of Xyloth soldiers was approaching, their weapons drawn and ready. "Time to go," Maya shouted, urgency driving her words. "We can't stay here." With their bags filled, they turned to flee, but the Xyloth soldiers were faster. The group found themselves cornered, the path behind them blocked by armed aliens. Panic surged within Maya, but she steeled herself. "Stay together," she yelled, rallying her team. "We can fight our way out." They formed a defensive line, standing shoulder to shoulder. Maya's heart raced as the Xyloth soldiers advanced. "We won't let them take us." The first soldier lunged at Maya, but she sidestepped, her training kicking in. She struck back with a swift kick, sending the soldier sprawling. Jake followed suit, taking down another guard, but they were outnumbered. "Maya, we need to retreat," Jake shouted, his face determined but concerned. "No," Maya replied fiercely. "We fight. We can't let them take our supplies." They held their ground, pushing back against the advancing guards. For every human that fell, another rose to take their place, a fierce spirit ignited within them. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the chaos. Maya glanced behind her to see Carlos' team breaking through a wall of crates, joining the fight. "Now we're talking," Carlos yelled, a fierce grin on his face. "Let's show these aliens what we're made of." With their numbers bolstered, the humans surged forward, pushing the Xyloth soldiers back. Maya felt a surge of hope as they fought side by side, their unity turning the tide of battle. In the midst of the chaos, Maya spotted a group of frightened civilians watching from a distance. "Get to the others," she shouted, pointing towards the escape route. "We'll cover you." As the civilians fled, Maya and her team continued to fight with everything they had. The Xyloth soldiers were strong, but the fire of the human spirit was stronger. They fought valiantly, their resolve unwavering as they battled against the odds. Each victory, no matter how small, felt like a triumph against the oppression they had faced for so long. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the remaining Xyloth soldiers began to retreat, confusion and fear etched on their faces. They were not prepared for the fierce resistance the humans had shown. As the last of the Xyloth fled, Maya felt a rush of exhilaration and relief. They had fought back, and they had won this battle. "Gather the supplies. We need to get back to the factory," she shouted, her heart still racing with adrenaline. With the crates secured, the team hurried back through the shadows of the city, their spirits lifted by their victory. They had taken a stand against their oppressors, and together they had proven that even in the darkest of times, hope could ignite the spark of rebellion. As they reached the safety of the factory, Maya looked around at her friends, their faces filled with triumph. They had faced the Xyloth and emerged victorious. But the war was far from over. But one thing was certain: they would continue to fight, united and unyielding, for their freedom and for the future of humanity. The factory buzzed with energy as the humans celebrated their first victory. Maya stood on a makeshift platform, looking out over her friends. They were no longer just survivors. They were warriors. The taste of victory filled the air, but Maya knew that this was only the beginning. "Listen up, everyone," she called, her voice cutting through the chatter. "Tonight, we fought back. We proved that we are not weak, that we will not be slaves. But we cannot stop here. The Xyloth will retaliate. We need a plan." Jake stepped forward, his expression serious. "We've made a statement tonight, but we can't rest on our laurels. They'll come back stronger. We need to strike again while they're still reeling from our attack." A murmur of agreement spread through the crowd. Maya could see the fire in their eyes. They were ready to fight again, to push back against their oppressors. "We need to gather intelligence on their movements," Maya continued. "We need to know when and where they're weakest. We'll need scouts to gather information, and we'll need to train ourselves for what's to come." Carlos raised his hand. "I have some contacts among the city's underground." They might have information on the Psyloth patrols and supply lines. If we can cut off their supplies, we can weaken them further." "Good thinking," Maya replied, her heart swelling with pride. "We'll need to coordinate with them. This is a team effort, and every piece of information is vital." As the discussions continued, Naya stepped up, her face illuminated by the flickering lights. "I have an idea for our next strike. We can hit one of their smaller supply depots during the day when their guards are less alert. We can create a diversion and move quickly to take what we need before they realize what's happening." Maya nodded, impressed. "That's a smart move, Nia. We'll plan for that. But first, we need to make sure everyone is prepared." The humans worked tirelessly over the next few days. They trained together, honing their skills in combat and strategy. Maya felt a sense of camaraderie growing among them, a bond forged in the fires of their shared struggle. They were no longer just individuals. They were a family, united by their desire for freedom. The time for action came sooner than expected. Intelligence gathered from Carlos' contacts revealed that the Psyloth were planning to transport a large shipment of supplies to their main base. This was their chance. "Tonight, we hit them hard," Maya announced, her eyes shining with determination. "This is our opportunity to cripple their operations. We can't let this chance slip away." As night fell, the team gathered once more. The excitement was palpable. They donned their makeshift armor and checked their weapons. The mood was tense, but there was also an undercurrent of hope. Maya stood at the front, looking at her team. "Remember, we're fighting for our future. We're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for every human that has suffered under the Psyloth rule. We can do this." With that, they moved out into the darkness, hearts pounding with adrenaline. The plan was set. They would ambush the Psyloth transport as it passed through a narrow canyon outside the city. As they approached the ambush site, the tension grew. Maya could hear the distant rumble of the transport ship. The air crackled with anticipation. "Positions," she whispered urgently. The team quickly took their places, hiding behind rocks and trees. The transport came into view, illuminated by searchlights. Maya's heart raced as she signaled the team. "Now," she shouted. They sprang into action, charging from their hiding spots. The element of surprise was on their side. The Psyloth soldiers were caught off guard, scrambling to respond to the sudden attack. Maya led the charge, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and exhilaration. She fought fiercely, taking down enemies with every strike. Jake fought beside her, his movements fluid and precise. "Stay focused," Maya called out as they pushed deeper into the fray. "We need to get to that transport." They fought their way through the chaos, their determination propelling them forward. Maya could see the transport ship, its doors still open, supplies stacked high within. They were so close. But just as they reached the transport, a loud explosion rocked the ground. A group of Psyloth reinforcements had arrived, and they were armed to the teeth. "Fall back," Carlos shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. "We can't hold them off."